Hi.
Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Now, this video wasn't planned, as all my videos seem to be lately. I am supposed to be doing my Spookmas art doll that was moved into January for this video, but I realized very quickly that he is way more complex and more detailed than I anticipated, so I need like a lot more time for him. So I decided to do just a little simple project in between, little bite-sized snack for you before the main course of that creature. So I put a vote on my community tab and I decided to let you guys pick which chunky, adorable little creature I would be making. And you guys decided a red panda. So that is what we are going to be working on. So let's get started. The first step in making the red panda is going to be sculpting the head and feet. And the first step of that is making a base out of either tin foil, aluminum foil, or aluminium foil. It is very important for a few key reasons. The first being it is going to save you clay. Clay can be very expensive, especially if you buy in bulk, so any way to save money on that is definitely a winner. The second reason is going to be it is going to make the head a lot lighter for your art doll later on, so when you're attaching it to an armature and moving on with the process, it's far less likely to catapult itself forward and fall off a desk and get damaged, so lighter head is definitely a good thing. Third reason is it's going to bake more evenly in the oven. If a clay is like just all clay, no foil base, it is more likely to crack and get lines and stuff in the oven because air gets trapped in it. So using a foil base makes it more likely that that will not happen and it'll end up baking much more smoothly. So once I have the rough head shape in the tinfoil, I'm going to put a thin layer of clay over the tinfoil just to get a nice base going, and then I'm going to figure out where I want the eyes to lay. Now for this red panda, I wanted to stay more on the cutesy side and more stylized than just straight realism, so I want to make sure I'm using really bubbly big eyes and placing them lower on the head. But even though I'm making it more stylized, you'd best believe that I was using, say it with me people, say it with me, references people, references. I was using a ton of references of red pandas just to get a general gauge of how their anatomy looks, what they look like, what their key features are. So while I'm sculpting it, I can make sure I keep in mind those features and you know, put them in as I'm sculpting. Now, I always will drive home, references are just so good to have. And I always say I'm not just talking about the anatomical muscle anatomy ones. I'm also talking about just inspiration. Inspiration is the best tool as a reference. Just photos you like and like color palettes you like and things just that inspire you and make you go, wow, I want to make that, or I want to make something similar to that, or it's giving me a great idea. Save that to use when you're making your drawing or art or whatever it is later, and you'll be surprised how much it levels you up. Like, even if you're so skilled, it'll still level you up that much more. There's just no downside whatsoever, so I always recommend references. Editor Sarah tried to tell me to not talk as much during the sculpting because it's her favorite part and she just likes to watch it without any talking, but now I just want to be a rebel and talk the entire time. So hi. How you guys doing? How are you enjoying the video so far? I'm a little delirious because I'm doing this voiceover at 11:36 at night right now. So I'm pretty tired and loopy. So I'm sure the rest of this voiceover is going to go swimmingly well. So, you know, enjoy that. I'm also really giggly. So it's great. It's going to go great. Oh, before I forget, the clay that I am using is Super Sculpey Medium Blend, but any polymer clay will work just fine. I wouldn't recommend using air dry clay because it's just way too prone to cracking, and I wouldn't trust it to not break and crack underneath the weight of wire, so polymer clay is definitely the way to go. Once the polymer clay is all sculpted in how I want, I bake it in the oven at 275 degrees Fahrenheit for roughly 30 to 45 minutes. But you should always just check the packaging, but I think it's pretty much the same across the board. once all the clay pieces are baked in the oven and attached to the armature, it's now time to build up the body. And for that, I'm using quilt batting. Now, quilt batting comes in these very big sheets because they're made for quilts. And I just cut that into really long strips, and I'll wrap it around the body over and over again until it's built up to how I want. Now, something I always want to mention, if you're actually going to be making an art doll, please keep in mind to not build up the body quite as much as you want the end result to be, because whatever fabric you're going to use is going to add additional thickness on top of that. So that's something you want to keep in mind for the final result. But like I always say, if you want chunk 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 boy, you go and you get chunk 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 boy. If you want thin 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 boy, you go and you get thin 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 boy. Okay, we support all body shapes and sizes here. Now I was definitely going for the chonk because I wanted a little stubby legged chubby red panda. So it was chunk 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 boy today. Popping in for your not so daily reminder that if you have been thinking about a project, be it art or just something that you've really been wanting to do but you haven't been doing it because you're either saying to yourself, I'm not good enough or talented enough, I can't do that.
I don't even know where to begin or how to even start.
Hey, you stop that right now, okay? You look at me in these eyes holes, okay? You look at me. You can do the thing, okay? That project, while this video is playing, go start it. I always say, go start it while this video is playing, whether that's making a materials list, writing out the steps that you're going to need to do to finish this project. Or if you got everything, you know what you need to do, start the project. Just start it. I promise, the first step is always the hardest. So just go start and you will feel so proud of yourself that you started your project. And who knows, you may even love what you end up making. Also drink water. Oh. Yep, look. Drink some water. And I love you guys. Mwah. Also, I'd like to share with you these wonderful art pieces. Look at them. Aren't they so talented? Aren't they so lovely? Just mwah, mwah. If you'd like to share something, be it fan art or art doll you've made or just anything in general that you would like to show me, please use the hashtag KPtutorial so that I can find it and potentially share it in my next video. Okay, now let's get started. Back to the video. We ain't getting started, we already started. I don't know where I'm putting this in at, but I hope the video's turning out well. The video is turning out fantastic, other me. Thank you for asking. Now it is time to add fabric onto the body, and I am using a wonderful, rust colored faux fur. I don't know. I use it for a few things. I really love this fabric. I use it for my bats when I want to make like a flying fox realistic bat. Use it for normal foxes, and it's also the perfect color for a red panda, so we're going to be using it for that. And I'd like to explain what I'm doing, but half the time I don't know myself. I'm definitely not the channel to come to for sewing advice and things like that. I'm not good at pattern making. I'm also too lazy for it, if I'm just being honest with myself. So I just kind of jigsaw puzzle pieces together until they work. Now I know I wanted two different fabrics for the red panda, for the really, really dark black underbelly and legs, and for the top rust color of the panda. So I am just taking two pieces of the fabric and I'm making them the length. I'm cutting like a piece of the length the entirety of the doll, and then I'm kind of trimming it to where I want each fabric to meet up in the middle, and then I'm just sewing that line and that join together all the way around. I don't think that made any sense. But like I said, don't come to me for sewing advice because I'm not the one. I hate sewing and I'm not good at it. I've been doing this for 7 years and I have gotten marginally better. I mean, but you know, sewing, you throw some stuff together, some things happen, and bam, art doll. But the limbs are always the same, so I know how to explain those. I will cut a piece of fabric the entire length of the limb, be it legs or a tail, and I will make sure I trim it so it's nice and snug around that limb, but not too tight because I want to make sure I leave room for the posability to happen. And then I will sew starting from the feet first, working my way up towards the main body using a baseball stitch, and then to join the limb and body fabric together, I will use a ladder stitch to hide the seams a little bit better. And once it is all sewn, it is now time to trim up this little fluffy boy because it's kind of hard to see what he looks like underneath all that. So I'm using a pet shaver just to get the bulk fur off. It's a tool I highly recommend if you're ever going to be making at least a few art dolls, because it just gets all the bulk fur off very quickly and very evenly. There's no jaggedness or anything that might happen with scissors. Now, it is still perfectly possible with scissors, it just takes a little bit longer and have to be a lot more careful. With all that being said though, I will still go back in with scissors, especially around the limbs and where the pet shaver might be a little bit too bulky to get good angles on, just to make sure that those stay nice and smooth and nice and trimmed and even looking, especially around the joints of limbs, so like elbows, ankles, knees, and things like that. I just want to make sure I trim around those with the scissors just to make sure they're nice and prominent. As you can see right here, you can see the difference. Now, I do plan on furring the face, but I want to make sure I do some base painting anyway for a couple reasons. The first being it's going to be a general guide of where I'm going to be placing the different colors of fur. I also want to make sure I paint it so that way if I miss any spots with the fur, that it won't be just like a gray clay underneath. It'll be the color as closely matched as I can so that it'll be a little bit more blended and less hard to see. Harder. You could have just said harder to see. I can't think. If you'd like to see how I fur my faces and any other more advanced and intermediate tutorials, I have all that available on my Patreon. I will leave a link in the description if anybody is interested. It is quite the jump from non-furred to furred face, and he's still quite the floofy little boy, just like his body was. So we're gonna need to do a little bit of grooming with this face and just trim it back a little bit so that the shape of the red panda can be shining once again, because he kind of went through some weird stages of like a Ewok to like a little Pomeranian looking fella to back to hopefully red panda. Now, I know you might be confused considering I started this sculpting with some glass eyes that had like a little pretty green behind it, but I decided to paint over them because it didn't fit anymore to me, and that's probably all in my head, and I'm probably overthinking it, but he didn't look as cute anymore, and it just didn't fit his expression anymore with the glass eyes, so I decided to paint over it. But I seem to have that habit a lot, where I always try them out, and then I'm just like, what if I just paint it over it? Let me just see what it looks like if I paint over it. Oh yeah, I like that a lot better. Let's just keep that. So that's always what I end up doing, but I try every time. I think I was really into whatever song I was listening to, and that's why you see all these weird hand motions. But it is now time to get started with airbrushing the body, and that's starting off with his little stripes on his tail. I am using a gravity feed dual action airbrush, which is just really fancy talk for paint that you put in from the top, and dual action being that it's pressure controlled. And I don't use any type of fancy Iwata or Badger or any of the really fancy brands. I just use a really cheap $20 one because I am prone to clog these things and I am terrified of messing up an expensive one. So I can get perfect results with a cheap one, so don't think you have to go all out right at the gate. The main point with the airbrushing was to airbrush the stripes on his tail, but I did want to go in just for a little bit of shading around the panda. I didn't want to leave it just I don't want to say bland because the faux fur isn't bland, but I didn't want to leave just a flat color, I wanted to give a little bit more variation, to give a little bit more interest. So I'm airbrushing pretty much all over the place. A little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit spritz, a little bit spritz, just all over. I'm also doing it to make sure that the two faux furs blend a little bit nicer together and it's not such a stark contrast edge to it, and then it just blends and flows a little bit nicer throughout the body. I'm also airbrushing some white felt, a pinky color, because I want to use it for paw pads for his little toes. So basically all I'm doing is just taking a little bit of the felt and cutting it into a rough paw pad shape. I pretty much just eyeballed it for every single one since I individually sculpted each foot. It's going to be a little bit different, so instead of trying to use a template, I just manually cut them all. It wasn't particularly difficult, but once I had each template figured out for each foot, I just glued them on with a little bit of hot glue. But once all the little toe beans are glued on, this little guy will be complete and it'll be time to look at the final result. How about you?